Now making their stage debut, well, actually not his debut, Ron Reagan, his triumphant return to Sexy Liberal Seattle. And for his first time ever on the Sexy Liberal stage in Seattle and here on the Stephanie Miller Show, Naveed Jamali. Naveed, I have worshipped you from afar for so long.
Oh, that's so kind of you. I'm so thrilled to be here. This is so exciting.
I see you, on TV in the box next to your good friend and my good friend Malcolm Nance, and I'm like, oh, squee. So yeah,
Malcolm is a great dude. I'm always honored to be on with him.
Well, you guys are both just such patriots, and just the Paul Revere's of our time, as it involves just everything that is your specialty, just terrorism and disinformation. How to Catch a Russian Spy, by the way, is Naveed Jamali's book. That is another must-read. Newsweek editor at large. Naveed, so much going on. First of all, I was surprised. We've been talking about. I'm just having some rolling, nerdgasms over Elizabeth Warren's disemboweling of Michael Bloomberg. But you were saying that you didn't think it was. You said this is not a good debate. It reminds you that yelling and fighting and trying to land body blows is not how we should elect chief executives. Although you did give some anti-terrorism advice. You said now would be a good time for Bloomberg to have thrown a smoke bomb and disappeared.
That's right. Can we all agree Bloomberg's performance was like the definition of cringeworthy? It gave me anxiety just watching it. I mean, it was just
abysmal, and it
I think did phenomenally. But he was, oh my God, it was actually like I could feel the pain. Like it was just painful.
Yeah. Well, Naveed, it was John Cooper that said ad Bloomberg is so much better than real Bloomberg. Yeah. I mean, this is where
that's right.
But in some ways, Naveed, it gave me hope for democracy that I'm like, oh, maybe you can't buy a nomination. Like maybe you do have to show up and debate ideas.
Or I guess the better thing is to just not show yourself and, like you said, just keep buying ads. But man, it was just like, it was like watching someone perform on stage with their fly down. Like it was just painful. You wanted to be like, I don't want to look anymore. But on the flip side, it's not so bad to see who Mike Bloomberg really is. Maybe that might, answer some questions for some folks out there that are thinking that this might be the right solution to go forward with. And clearly, if you're walking away from that debate thinking Mike Bloomberg is someone you want to vote for, I have a bunch of questions.
I got some questions for you. Yeah, and I agree with you, and I feel like Elizabeth Warren did take that tack for a long time of non-aggression and not attacking other candidates and not taking the bait and, going after Trump. And look what happened to her in the polls. So,
right.
Fighting Liz was back, and I have to say it,
He was phenomenal. And just to clarify what I was saying about what I don't like, what I always liked about Warren, and what I always liked about Cory Booker and others is substance. Like, I just like I love the passion, of course, and look, I'll have to give a nod to Pete. I mean, whatever you think about him, Pete is clearly a very intelligent young man and very, well-spoken. But Elizabeth Warren has substance. I really believe that.
Yeah.
And I think that always comes through. What frustrated me is that last night was more about sniping each other to try to unseat, the polls, and it was less about substance. And to me, with the exception of Warren, I think that's the thing that I think frustrates me. Is I think that the thing that separates Democrats really from Trump, I mean, just there's so much, but the guiding thing that separates them, for me at least, is we have substance, that we actually have ideas, that we actually have, ways forward, that there's that substance. And when we depart from that, I think it unfortunately it becomes noise. And I think that, one-upmanship and sort of landing body blows might be a good soundbite, but what we really need as Americans is substance. And
I agree. I agree with you on that. We just had Malcolm Nance, or as we call him, Shouty McShoutface, yesterday, shouting about, but just not doing Russia's work for them and the Democratic infighting. So I agree with you on that. And some of it's the moderators. And here's where you, Naveed Jamali, are the great uniter, and that is uniting us in hating Chuck Todd. You said, who needs Russian disinformation when you have Chuck Todd?
What was with the all right? I mean, I was just like, I want to hear what they have to say, Chuck Todd. I don't want to hear you. It was like hustling someone out of a room or something.
Yes.
And by the way, I think that being the fact that, people are so critical of women on TV, my colleagues, the things they have to put up with. Can we just discuss what the hell was up with Chuck Todd's hair last night? It looked ridiculous, coupled with the all righty. I mean, it was just
I would like to welcome you to my coffee clutch full time. Thank you. Sometimes somebody got the scrutiny that women get for their hair and their everything. Thank you.
Exactly. I mean, it's infuriating. And it totally, look, we're all there to hear the candidate, not the moderator, right? I mean, isn't that the point?
Right. So let's
this
talk.
is a chance for Americans to hear who the next Democratic candidate might be, and hopefully the next president might be.
Yeah.
Give them a chance to answer the question. When they're hitting that stride of about to answer the question, don't shut them up. That just seems to me moderation 101. Let them finish their question. I'm not saying to let them go answer, without any time or anything here, but his sort of all right. It was so condescending to me. I can see someone who's been on TV. If someone did that to me, it would totally throw off my gait in terms of responding. And it's just.
And when you're the person that seems more condescending than Michael Bloomberg, you're having a bad night.
That's right. The only way Michael Bloomberg could win is if Chuck Todd entered the race.
Oh God, that's awesome.
How about that moment? I can't go to TurboTax. Listen, you poors are going to have to wait for my taxes.
By the way, I think it's pretty safe to say I'm never going to be on Chuck Todd's show.
I was just going to say, and you're an MSNBC analyst.
Well, I was, but I'm still, they still get to choose where you go.
See, that's political courage, Naveed Jamali. Yes. So, but that being said, I was saying, I thought everybody I agreed with, say Bloomberg, I agree with what a lot of people had to say. You made a great point on Twitter, Naveed, because I was saying I agree with Elizabeth Warren and Bernie on Medicare for all, and I understand why people are scared. I understand incrementally it would be great if we could start with a public option, but you tweeted one of the great socialist programs in the U.S. are armed forces, socialized health care, education, tuition assistance, pay, and yes, even uniforms. Tell me again how socialized health care is good for our military, vets, and our families, but not the American people. And you said people complaining about socialism while not acknowledging it's a fundamental component of our military. Thank you.
Yes. I mean, we're a socialist democracy, and whether you like or dislike Bernie, if you call 911 and the police come, they're not going to give you a bill.
Yep.
Hopefully that's the point is,
yep.
That's the way the country lives. We've taken socialized services and somehow associated that with exactly what Bloomberg said yesterday, which is communism, which is not the case. Socialized education. I mean, we have all these things. It's not a bad thing. And I have to say I agree with Elizabeth Warren and Bernie, and frankly Bernie Sanders with this. I think, I don't think healthcare should be a for-profit business.
Thank you.
Something that should be any more than K through 12 education should be. I mean, or a fire department or a police department or military. I mean, in its construct, that's a basic service that a government should, provide for its citizens. I just think that is, part of the social contract we have.
Yeah.
It doesn't, this whole idea of always keep your private doctor. It's so absurd. I just want to say one thing, Seth.
Agreed.
When I was in the Navy Reserves for quite some time, and I had this great program called TRICARE Reserve Select. TRICARE Reserve Select was health care that I and my family have. It was essentially equivalent of Medicare. Although the company that ran it, a company was, they had it was I can't remember, but one of the big healthcare providers actually ran the contract. But it was subsidized by the government. So you still actually had, which, I'm not thrilled about, but you had private insurance that was making money off of this, but it was a socialized, subsidized government program. And it worked phenomenally. I mean, it was just a great program. And I just think about this, and the premiums were reasonable, very reasonable. And I think, why isn't this something that isn't rolled out to everyone? I mean, it's just what we should have. And by the way, just one quick thing with that, it's always cheaper for all of us if people have health care and they don't wait till they're, really sick to go to the doctor, which is 10 times more expensive.
Thank you. Yep. Naveed, all great points. Well, here's also the issue, because, again, I'm on the left. I talk about, obviously, all the time that Bernie's right on this, and yet I get called a Bernie basher for pointing out that I think we are going to have a hard time with the four things: his age, his health, his socialism, and being Jewish. And I think not one of those things, and those aren't things that we find detriments, but this, I'm sure you've seen this latest poll of all of the things Americans have a problem with. Socialism is at the very top of the list, right? It's like
So
black, Jewish, gay, a woman, are all like huge percentages of Americans don't have a problem with that. Socialism is at the very top of the list, and there is that disconnect that you're talking about. That this is our military, this is their Medicare and those Social Securities, and people don't identify that as socialism, right?
That's exactly. It's a perception issue, right? I mean, if you take away the word socialism and you describe what you mean by socialized healthcare, and you don't use the word socialism, I'm sure those same polls would show overwhelming support for that.
Yeah.
So what has happened is the term socialism has been radicalized, right? Like, it's been taken out of context, and people, when they hear that word, when they hear that term, they associate it with something. I don't know what they associate it with, but they associate it with something extremely negative. But when it's explained, and you can see this with healthcare, right? With the polls that show what most Americans feel about universal healthcare, completely different.
Thank
right?
you.
So
Yep.
universal healthcare, let's be clear, that's socialized healthcare, right? It's just a
That's
different
right.
term.
Yep. Naveed, I wish I could have you for an hour. Your first time. I have so much. You tweeted, "Oh my God, I was on Fox with Grinnell, and he is painfully unqualified to be the DNI." But then again, who in this administration is qualified for the post they hold? And you said, "Look, there's a real debate as to what the DNI and ODNI do, but you can't just put people in there who are political hacks. Or, I mean, you can. It's just not good for the country." He, by all accounts, is just a Twitter troll that has been. And the only reason, here it is, Naveed, here's your area of specialty. Jesse Ferguson tweets, "Why would Trump install Rick Grinnell to head U.S. intelligence?" Here's Grinnell's op-ed arguing that Russia's attack on the U.S. was no big deal and happens all the time. He even argues that Putin didn't want Trump to win. Know who he was arguing against? U.S. intelligence. Of course this is who Trump appoints.
Of course. I mean, it's just, it's like they're not even hiding anymore, right? They're not even trying. It's like it's become, I think, if Trump wins a second term, not only is it going to be awful, but we're just going to be disappointed in how lazy he's going to become in trying to hide his lies. I just don't think he's going to make an effort. This is absurd, and it is exactly as we go into the Roger Stone sentencing. I mean, look, he's very clearly trying to control any internal checks that he sees as barriers.
Trying to erase the Russia thing, trying to erase the Mueller
That's exactly
investigation.
Right.
What can you tell us quickly, Naveed? Oh my God, I wish I had you for 2 hours. But this Julian Assange story is huge, as all our legal experts are saying. Lawyers don't generally say things they can't prove, so that Julian Assange was offered a pardon through Rohrbacher by Trump if he would deny that Russia was behind the DNC hack, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything to add to that. That sounds completely right. And, again, it's just, this was clearly, an attempt by Trump leading into the 2016 election to try to game the system, to cheat. We see it now with what he's trying to do, what he tried to do with Hunter Biden. And by the way, we can all agree successfully that the fact that Joe Biden, I don't know how you qualify this, but the fact that he's so, he's kind of fallen the polls, I have to believe, is in part associated to this whole attack that he's been able to, even under impeachment, he was able to bring out the attack against Biden successfully. I think it turned, unfortunately, Americans against him. But that's how he rolls.
I've said Kamala Harris was the number one target of Russian bots. I mean, again, the fact that they are obviously pushing Bernie Sanders, as is Fox News, as is Trump. And I understand if you're a Bernie voter, you can disagree that he would be the easiest for Trump to beat, but that's obviously not, what Trump and Russia and whatever. I would just like them out of our politics, because you're right. At some point, we don't know to what degree they're choosing our candidates and not us, right?
Yeah, and I'll say something quickly about that. There's two things. First of all, it's important for Americans to understand that just because the Russians are doing something to hurt or harm Bernie Sanders, or in this case, they're pushing Bernie Sanders, in the same way that I say this about Tulsi Gabbard, who I am clearly not a fan of, that does not mean that Russia is somehow in bed with Bernie Sanders and is somehow colluding for him to win the election. I want to make that clear. There's no evidence of that. Nonetheless, they're clearly trying to put their finger on the scales of our election and create chaos. The second thing that I think Americans should understand, that disturbs me the most, that gets the least amount of coverage, is that where the Russians really weigh in our elections, and it's not just the Russians, by the way, it's other countries as well, is not just with disinformation, but rather it's their ability to get money into this country and use that money to actually, get involved in our elections. Look, we think about Facebook ad buys for 2016. Someone had to put an ad in. Someone had to write a check. That was money that was making its way here to the United States and people who were buying it.
Yeah.
There is this is what happens. And this is the part that I know intimately, that it's not just people sitting behind a keyboard in St. Petersburg or Moscow. The Russians actually have a network of human beings here in the United States and unfortunately, it's disturbing, but those people are really the ability for them to do things like really interfere in our election.
Yeah.
To make a donation to a candidate, to do things
Yeah.
to collect intelligence. And
Yeah.
it's
Naveed, we're so long, but yes, I have this crazy dream that
sorry.
Americans will decide American elections one day.
hope so.
It's going to be the first 7-hour panel for Sexy Liberal Seattle with you and Ron Reagan. I cannot wait
look forward to it.
Cannot wait to see you. Thanks so much, Naveed.